So we need actually to engage. There are a lot of people who say, well, just say no, just say no. But who are we saying no to? We have to tell them, here's a message about why we don't want it. It's a lot of work, and I'm afraid it just will it's invading our lives, but it's just not going to go away. And so we need to engage. We need to get the proposal rejected. That's the top line, if we can. That means getting some good arguments, good evidence, and fighting it. If that fails, then we want to mitigate the impacts, because and if we do nothing now, we'll have lost our voice. The statutory consultation is our chance to say, actually, don't put it next to my house. Move it 3 or 4 fields away, or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but the only mitigation chances we have are now, this year. And then finally, if that fails, we need to obtain the maximum community benefits. Otherwise, they will just take all the money and the land and be very happy. There's a lot of things on these next 2 slides, and I'm not going to go through all of them in details, but these are the arguments that we can win. We can win the argument around loss of agricultural land. We can win arguments that the developer hasn't considered the alternatives of are there brownfield sites around that could have been used. We can win on the damage to the local economy because they are losing jobs. Well, that's part of the government agenda, isn't it? It's not just net zero, it's about growth and jobs. We can win on the damage to the local ecology. There's a report by the RSPB that says, actually, solar farms are pretty good for birds. Yeah. Well, the pigeons do really nicely. Yeah. The pigeons don't need our help, frankly, around here. The lapwings, the skylarks, the yellowhammers, the linnets, and I know some of you have been doing the recording out there using the recording Merlin app and others. So we're getting the evidence of what's out there, but the skylarks and lapwings cannot survive on solar panels. You can't nest on a solar panel, and lapwings do not forage on solar panels, although there are good populations that come through here. So there are arguments that we can win on biodiversity. The loss of amenity and local well-being. I mean, there are a lot of dogs here, I guess, so there are a lot of dog walkers. You go out there, we go out into this landscape because it kind of helps us breathe, and we feel better for it. Well, if you're going to be surrounded by fences and panels at 3.5 meters high, you will lose a lot of that sense of well-being. That we believe. The disruption during construction, 750 truck movements a day, whether it comes through the middle of your village or through newly constructed roads across fields behind you, I think will be challenging. And the risks, finally, are posed by battery energy storage systems. They are unquantified, and the government actually, and the Health and Safety Executive, it's unregulated. Nobody knows how to regulate for battery energy storage at this scale, and certainly not on top of a chalk aquifer that actually supplies 250,000 people. There are more arguments we can win. Lack of democratic accountability. We should be pushing this. We are losing our voices. We shouldn't be losing our voices. Poor community engagement, I've mentioned that already. The developers' lack of seeking alternative sites, I've said that. The distribution, the inequitable distribution of the way that the benefits of the scheme will flow. That money will flow here to here, but it won't flow to us. The offshoring of profits, land ownership being transferred that's invisible, all the rest of it. And we believe there's a better way of achieving this. So I'm personally not anti-net zero. I've been working in solar energy for the last 40 years. I was past chair of the Solar Energy Society in the UK. That was about 15 years ago. I never envisaged that nobody thought that solar panels, that we could just about persuade people to put a few on their roofs back in 2010 with the help of a very generous feed-in tariff. But nobody thought that you would eventually be covering entire swathes of the countryside. It just doesn't feel right. It never felt right to me, even back in the day that. But it's always be careful what you wish for. Sometimes things become arrive in unexpected ways. But the reason that they're doing this is because solar is so cheap. It is so cheap. And if anybody says it doesn't make money, well, why would they put £600 million of their investors' money into our fields if they weren't going to get a rate of return guaranteed for 40 years? And it's probably something like a 10 to 12% guaranteed rate of return for 40 years. As a business investment, you would flock to it if you wanted to save, because everybody's going to need electricity, so it's guaranteed. But the CPRE they did a study that basically showed you could put on top of all the roofs and out of town shopping centres and warehouses or the data centres. That's another story. We get to that. But if you did that, brownfield sites, car parks, and all the rest of it, you could get up to 120 gigawatts of supply, embedded supply by 2050. The problem is that requires lots of different small developers doing lots of bits of work around, and it's not very joined up, and you can't actually do that. The government doesn't have central control over it. Well, don't we like free markets a bit? So actually, if you compelled that to happen, it could happen. It is more expensive, but the same argument that says actually solar is too expensive, we must go nuclear. Nuclear is actually 10 times the price. Your bills will definitely go up if we go all nuclear. So solar's not a bad deal. It is cheap, but you can put it on the roofs, and it costs a little bit more money than putting it on fields. But if you don't put it on the fields, we don't lose all of that huge well-being value. And there are alternative solutions. I was working on a project, a team that was working for me in Ireland. We did some work on what's called virtual power plants. They put a number of houses with solar panels, heat pumps, and batteries in these houses. And they could control this virtual power plant. They could control the energy flows in those houses in a village. Well, actually, it was a town of Dingle. They could control that remotely. So like a power station, but it's embedded. And it was owned by the people who lived in those houses. And they published the results were recently published in Nature. So this is not a rubbish piece of research. This is well researched. They got 20% reduction in their energy bills. 20% less energy was used in the network. So that means actually you don't need stuff out on the transmission network. You don't need the traditional engineering model. I said to David Vernon, who's the project manager for Kingsway, well, actually, we need more embedded rooftop generation. He says, well, that just reduces the supply. Yes, that's the idea. We use less supply, so you won't have to build all your assets, and we could do you out of a job, mate. That would be great, wouldn't it? That's the argument we're coming against. It's big money, big investors, big thinking, old engineering thinking against something that's new, dynamic, and could actually work. We know how to do this. Actually, this has been trialed around the world, and is successful. It's just not where the money is. It could be. So, arguments, I have to say, we can't win. There are some arguments we cannot win. So some people, solar's not cost effective. There was a World Bank report that puts us on the bottom of a list of income that you can get from solar power. Yes, Namibia is at the top. If you've ever been to Namibia, it's got 2 million. It's a wonderful country. It's 2 million people and more sunshine than they know what to do with, obviously. But and then we're right at the bottom. But if solar is not a good business investment, why are they proposing 600 million on our fields and however many billions in those 57 developments around the country? It's a great business model for them. So we can't win that argument. There are in some of the campaign groups there are climate change skeptics who say, well, actually this is not an argument. Well, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you are on that. I personally believe in the climate science, and I think that's an existential threat. That's my belief. But it doesn't really matter. We're all in the same. We're in this room to stop one thing: an inappropriate use of land. We don't want this to happen here. It doesn't need to. So we can't win that argument because the government is firmly committed to the climate science. And the third one, we don't like it. So go away because we don't want it. Well, you can say that all you like. And Ed Miliband actually said, we will never listen to we don't like it, we don't want it here. We have to have good reason. So if we come together with the right arguments and we stand behind why we don't want it, I think we stand a chance of all of those arguments that we can win. What have we done? Okay. So Kingsway Solar Community Action formed about a year ago. There's a bunch of us who've been just trying to gather this evidence, and it's fantastic that you are now coming on the journey with us, and let's see what we can do together. But we've got a committee now that's fully constituted. We've engaged with the local councils. We've got a very good website. Actually, everybody goes there. It's very informative. It's very good, and we'll have a nice video on it soon. And active media engagement. So we've been on BBC Look East. We were hoping they were going to be here today. I'm not sure if they have turned up or not, but it's in their diary. We've met with Downing Renewable Developments. That's the Kingsway developer. Developed leaflets, put news items around. So we've done a whole heap of stuff. You can read all of this. And now finally organised a walk for the 8th of June. And we could tick, done, fantastic. Now we've got to move on to the next thing, which will be the statutory consultation. So what we have to do, what we want to do is provide information to the local community. So hopefully this is helping to give you that information. Support the national campaign, so we're doing that, we're communicating with them a lot, and examine the final designs. When they come in, these are going to be big documents. There's going to be hundreds of pages and thousands of words to read, and we won't have the expertise to do that. So we need more people to help understand how we can divvy out the work. So if there's any expertise out there and you just want to lend your brain to this, we would be really welcoming of it. We want to respond to the statutory consultation. 6 weeks to turn that round. As I said, we don't have the expertise for a lot of this stuff, but we will do our best to help with that. Collect the evidence to build the cases for the examination in public next year. Continue to engage with the local MP. We've had 2 or 3 meetings with the local MP, and we want more, and the local councillors. And we want to engage with the Secretary of State's office. I was very pleased that somebody earlier on saying how they'd written to Ed Miliband and he'd written back. It was very, I think it was very vanilla kind of reply, but anyway, at least it was courteous. Anyway, if the scheme is approved, we want to ensure that the community actually doesn't get left out. So somehow we want to engage some kind of negotiation in that. So what do we need? We need resources. We're about 15 people in the committee, and then there are volunteers who've helped today. So we need that community of KSCA to grow. So we need volunteers to help with the campaigns and the skills, and we need experts. So if there are any experts in biodiversity, law, particularly law, any lawyers out there? We really need lawyers. And money. We need money. So just to pay for printing, possibly expert in legal advice. Now, we're never going to raise the kind of money that we would need to put a barrister up in front of the planning inspectorate, but we can try. And then the more voices that are heard. So write to your MP. Do write to your MP. I think let's swamp the inbox of the MP, because that engagement is absolutely essential. There's a lot going on in Parliament now around this. And write to the Secretary of State. Just swamp the inbox. Just throw sand in the gears and make some noise, I think. Because the more of our voices that are heard, the more they understand that this is still, that there's democratic accountability in this country, and we have to be able to use it. So there's a little slide there about our vision, and our values and our vision, but that's the end of the talk. There's a QR code there. It's also around where you can take the survey of some feedback about how you feel about the solar farm and the walk today. So we would really, really value your input into that survey. That will give us data, independent data, to say to the planning inspectorate what this community feels. And we really, really have to tell them what we feel. And you've all been alone, I guess, out there worrying about this. Well, you're not. We're all together now. So fantastic. Thank you for coming.